There we go. We're in. Thank you, Justin, for being with Chasing Justice today. We are so excited to have you. You are our first mayoral candidate that we're interviewing this year, and you are running in the race for the city of Cleveland. And you are trying to be the next African American male mayor. And so we are excited to hear from you today. So let's get into who you are.
Absolutely.
So you're the new kid on the block. You just popped out of nowhere. They've heard the name Bibb before,
Yeah.
Leon Bibb. And
My cousin.
See,
Yeah,
people have been
yeah,
asking me.
yeah.
They say, are they related?
Yeah, I get that a lot.
Yeah, I'm
and
sure.
Charlie Bibb too, out of East Cleveland. I get
Oh,
that one a lot
okay.
too, yeah.
Is he related to you?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah.
So we got to do an ancestry before the
I
election?
think so. Yeah.
Okay. So we're excited, like I said, for you to be with us today and taking the time. And so we wanted to give you a platform. We wanted you to be able to reach people who are not normally engaged in politics and don't know anything and why should I vote? And especially young people. Young people are like, oh, the system doesn't work. But we know the system doesn't work because young people aren't engaging in it.
Absolutely.
So hopefully this will give them an incentive and that you are going to be able to tell them why you should be the next mayor for the city of Cleveland. So let's talk about you. Where'd you come from? Who are you? What's your background?
I'm just a kid from Dove. I grew up in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood on 121st and Dove. My parents divorced when I was 4, and so my mom and I were in my grandma's house, and my dad was actually in Shaker. And so growing up as a kid, at an early age, I was forced to figure out how to navigate multiple worlds. And so my mom was really smart. I think she was, sheltered me a lot in the sense that I grew up in the church. I remember vividly going to vacation Bible school in the summer, giving Easter speeches at Reverend Stewart's church in the Lee Harbor neighborhood at Zion Chapel Baptist Church where I was baptized, and then singing in the 93.1 WZAK choir.
All right now.
On Saturday mornings.
All right.
At Bishop Ward's. I can hold a couple notes every now and then.
Just a couple notes.
When I feel it.
All right now. We're going to put you to the test in the next one. So we ready to give a song in the next one, okay?
But, I was blessed to have a really amazing village to make sure that I had a shot at life. My mom graduated from Adams. It took her over 20 years to get her associates at Tri-C, her bachelor's at Ursuline, her master's at Cleveland State. And I was with her in that journey, helping her type her papers, researching for her. I was her that was my first job, being her research assistant.
Oh my God, I'll never put you in the same room with my kids because they have the exact same story. There's a lot of those stories in our community that's never heard about how we struggle. And so that's an awesome story. Yeah.
And then my dad, he was one of the first black cops and firefighters in Cleveland Heights, did both jobs for over 30 years. And so seeing his dedication to serve the community and his work ethic, I learned a lot from my dad, who unfortunately passed away 4 years ago.
Oh, my condolences.
Thank you. And then my grandma, Sarah, who is still in the house where I grew up on Dove. She just turned 91 last August. She just got her vaccine, thank the Lord. And she was just walking up the block last week as the weather warmed up. And I kept telling Grandma, put your mask on. Even though you're vaccinated, you got to keep that mask on. And my grandma was truly a fighter. She was one of the first neighborhood watch captains on our block. And, in the early 1990s, this was at the height of the crack epidemic. And she was doing everything in her power to make sure that we had a safe place to play growing up on Dove. And so I remember vividly my grandma, Sarah, organizing with the councilman at the time, Councilman White, Commander McGrath, who was the commander of our police district at the time, other clergy in the community, coming into our living room. I would, help bring coffee and tea, sitting on the plastic couch, as you know what I'm talking about.
Because I had the plastic on my couches too.
Yeah. And, and the jukebox that she still has from the bar that she used to run, playing Marvin Gaye and Temptations, but really organizing.
That's how it was done.
And that's how it was done.
Exactly.
And we still need more of that.
It's coming back. Give it time.
Yeah.
I see a lot of you young people coming out. Tariq Shabazz and Antoine Tolbert and Arnold Shern. They're all out there, and there's a couple young ladies who are going to be running for council as well. And so I see a lot of the young people rising up, and I'm excited because
I'm excited too.
I'm too old for this stuff. Everybody keeps trying to draft me, but I'm just too old for this
You're
stuff.
never too old.
Oh, yes, I am. I will support you 100%. But I throw chairs at people, so I can't be on council.
Don't chairs at me.
See, that's old school. Y'all, a lot of people don't understand. That's old school. You get chairs thrown at you sitting on city council. That's right. So I mean that's the politics I grew up with. And so that's exciting. That's exciting.
So those are my roots.
Okay.
That's really informed my worldview, you know.
Okay.
And by the grace of God, and I was able to get a scholarship to go to American University in Washington D.C. I worked for President Obama when he was in the U.S. Senate during my freshman year of college. I started doing community organizing in Anacostia in Southeast D.C. and you really cut my teeth, really understanding the importance of leveraging resident voice, mobilizing folks to solve problems, and we were doing this with high school kids in Anacostia. And so that's when it clicked for me that, at the time as a freshman, I went to D.C. thinking that I work on Capitol Hill and that'll be the best way to solve all the problems, right? And then when I got to Capitol Hill, I realized that the change starts on the streets.
It does.
Right now,
it starts down here where we are.
Exactly.
It's here, not up down. It's down up.
Exactly, and we got to do a better job in Cleveland, especially of connecting the grassroots and the grass tops.
Right.
And that's the kind of leadership I want to bring as mayor of the city, because without that leadership, I don't think we'll be able to ever achieve our potential as a community.
I totally agree. I think that is what's lacking. I think that, and I'm saying this and they've heard me say it, and that's why they won't let me interview them, is that the 30-year veterans that we have on council, and our current mayor was on council, so he's been there for over 30 years, is that they really have eliminated the grassroots community, their voice. They don't want to hear the voice of the people, and so now we find ourselves with a high rate of children being put into the pipeline to prison, failed school systems, because they did not want to hear from the people. And so I think, watching you young people come up, it's time for the people to get their voice back, and you guys are going to get it back for us.
Yeah.
And that's I'm excited. I'm just excited.
We just got to keep pushing. Keep pushing.
Yeah. So let me ask you a couple questions here. So what's your work experience? Like, have you done nonprofit work? I know that you said you work with Obama, which is just totally exciting. My best friend is going to watch this video and be like, "Oh man, you got to hook me up and let me meet Obama." He totally loves Obama. Like, Obama is his dude. Talk a little bit more about where you came from. What is your kind of work experience? So that people know that you're not just coming into this with good intentions. I'm sure that you're educated. I can tell from your mannerisms. I can tell from the way that you're conveying your thought process. You're very intelligent.
Thank you.
And I think that you should, tell people, how did you get that intelligent? Let's talk about it.
My career arc is kind of crazy, but let me just give you step by step. I got my first start, actually started my first nonprofit as a sophomore in college.
Okay.
It was called DC Today, DC Tomorrow.
All right.
And the goal of that was to help kids in Anacostia that we were organizing with, to help them graduate from high school by giving them more service learning opportunities in their community, because for them to graduate, they needed 100 hours of community service as a requirement in DC law. And so we worked with a high school there to really help those kids get access to those opportunities in their neighborhood. And by the time we completed our work, we were able to help over 300 kids graduate high school effectively by our grassroots efforts in DC. And then after college, after the Great Recession happened, a lot of the kids I went to college with had a hard time finding a job, but I was able to meet the chairman and CEO of Gallup at the time, and he offered me a job to be the youngest associate partner at Gallup at the age of 22. And so I got my career doing strategy consulting, so essentially advising foundations across the country and local governments on how to use data and technology and leverage resident voice, right, to make communities better. Projects like working with the Forum for Youth Investment, which is really focused on helping cities think about how do you have more data-driven strategies to help communities coordinate out-of-school time support resources for kids, to address housing insecurity, to address food deserts, to address the social and emotional aspects of learning. And so I did that for about 2 years after I graduated from college. And then I was appointed to be the first, for the first county executive, his special assistant for education and economic development, the youngest member of his cabinet at 23. And, you know, I'll say this, at the time, I thought I knew everything about policy after being in D.C. So I come back to Cleveland, and I meet with a member of county council, and I go and do this major pitch on my education strategy. And they're like, this is all sound great, but what's in it for me?
Ah.
And so what I learned in that moment was the importance of building trust and relationship building. You can have all the great ideas in the world, but if you don't start at the ground level to build that trust, to understand what are your pain points, what are your needs, what are your wants, what are your desires, and you build solutions that way, that's how you get buy-in. And so I did that for about a year and a half. Was also appointed to the board of Cobb Community College at the same time during my tenure working for the county. And then was offered a job in New York doing finance and strategy for a large company in New York City. And then after that, I was able to get my law degree and MBA from Case Western.
Oh, listen to him, y'all. He
And
got a
so-
law degree.
And an
Come
MBA.
on.
And
And an MBA. Come on now.
And
You talking my language.
and the reason why I did that was because throughout my career at that time, I saw the importance, whether you're leading a large government or leading a large business or a nonprofit, understanding the intersection of business and policy and operations goes a long way to better meet the needs of your constituents or your customers or the residents you're trying to serve. And so really enjoyed my time at Case Western. I clerked for Squire, realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. And so I realized big law wasn't for me. Then I got a call from the CEO of Gallup at the time, and he says, Justin, I'm seeing all this research looking at the future of cities. Why don't you come back to Gallup and build a global cities consulting business? So I did that while I got my JD MBA.
All right.
And
That is
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, so I spent 3 years building the global cities consulting business for Gallup, advising mayors across the country from Tulsa to Columbia, South Carolina, and it was a phenomenal experience. And then after that, I served as vice president of corporate strategy and M&A for KeyBank, advising a $1.7 billion business, and really making sure that Key was not only investing in Northeast Ohio, but across the country in a more equitable way to maximize shareholder value for our shareholders, but also for the residents and the markets we were serving across the country. And now, in addition to running for mayor, I serve as Chief Strategy Officer for Urbanova, which is an urban tech startup. So essentially my job is to partner with cities across the country, particularly mid-sized cities, on how do they use technology to measure air quality, to measure issues around environmental justice and so forth. And so I've been fortunate enough to have a really diverse career over the last 15 years.
All right
And
now.
that's a lot, but I think people need to know.
And how old are you now? 'Cause
I turned 34 April 26.
oh my God, I don't
Yeah.
remember 34. God bless you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
have all that under your belt. Now, see,
Yeah.
my story starts in high school where I organized protests. And
That's
so
That's what's up. Yeah.
I did it for
Yeah,
years.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
later on, I went to law school, and then I started doing recently dealing with misconduct of police and filing the proper paperwork in the courts. And so I love your background because it seems like you and I have a lot in common.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to go hang out for a little while and talk
Yeah.
some more. But I'm digging what you're saying here. So, all right, so you're gonna, you're running for mayor. Cleveland is the only mayoral controlled school system. It is a wreck, and I'm saying that on the record. It is a mess. I have watched the numbers of our children go down in graduation. People have migrated out of the city because of the school system, and those numbers of children that have come down from the school system are now being funneled into the juvenile detention center.
Yeah.
And we have a prosecutor who thinks it's okay to bind over kids to be adults into the adult system. And so we know that Cleveland is impoverished. We know this. We don't see a whole lot happening to bring people up out of poverty in Cleveland, because that also attributes to the juvenile delinquency that occurs growing up in neighborhoods that have been decimated by foreclosure crises. And now they're getting around to, after 10, 15 years, they're getting around to tearing down buildings. So now we have empty lots to look at instead of bad buildings. So you're going to be, if elected, you're going to be the mayor who controls the school system and the school board. First of all, I'm not going to ask you who they are if you have. Have you started to look at people that you want to appoint to our school board? And have you started looking at people who you want to appoint to be the CEO over the school board? Or are you willing to leave it the way it is?
I think we need dramatic change across the entire city. And the first thing we have to do is change the culture. And that needs to happen in every single department in City Hall. When Mayor Jackson was elected in 2005, there was the Operations and Efficiency Task Force. Almost every major department in City Hall went under audit except for one. You want to figure out which one didn't? The police department.
No, really?
So, and I say that to say, I can't do any of the major big policy things I want to do until I build a management team that's really focused on changing the culture of City Hall on day one.
Okay.
That's got to be my number one priority.
Okay.
And then second to that, once we establish that cultural change and that North Star, I need to make sure that, we have personnel, not only in my cabinet, but middle management and frontline employees that are going to reflect that culture and abide by that culture.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that I'm engaging every aspect of the entire city government to have a seat at the table to guide that process. And so what I intend to do is conduct a top-down review of every single department so that I can get under the hood to understand how do we better structure these departments in a more transparent and logical way to make sure we're doing everything we can to the voters and taxpayers of the city to be held accountable on day one as mayor. That's the first thing I need to do in order to build trust and credibility.
And you're talking leadership, because
absolutely,
leadership, that's exactly what leadership does. They don't grandfather in the old administration and the workings, and so leadership does exactly what you're saying, is to audit and find out why aren't things working, and to put into place. So there are going to be people who are going to hear this message, and they're going to be working in City Hall, and their family members are going to be there, and they're going to be like, oh my God, he's going to fire everybody. And so we need to clarify your message so they understand that this is not a campaign of firing everybody, but to just really fix the issues and create new policy within the government so that it functions better. And so I think that's the message you're giving me.
And this is about giving everybody that works in city government the agency and the tools to do their job to the best of their ability.
Right.
And empowering them to tell me and my team what's working and what's not working.
Okay.
To give them a seat at the table and give them voice. Because we know that if you have purpose in your work, it's going to only make you more an engaged employee.
Correct.
And there are a number of different remarkable public servants working inside city government. And my job as mayor is to figure out how do I unleash that potential to the best of our ability to serve the residents of this great city. That's my job.
Okay.
And creating that cultural change plays a big part in that.
Now, there's going to be a lot of resistance to a cultural change, because there are people who have been there for a long time, and they become acclimated. I mean, he is a 3 or 4 time mayor. I've lost track. And so there's a certain culture that operates within City Hall. And so I think that it's important for anyone who's listening to this to understand that if you've been miserable in your job at City Hall, that this is your opportunity to not be miserable anymore, and not so much as a headhunt. Because people are going to view it that way. I heard that in the last mayoral run when candidates spoke, and people were like, oh my God, he's going to start firing everybody. And so trying to get that message out so they understand that you from what I'm hearing you say, you want to just make life better for everybody.
Absolutely. And we should make City Hall a gem and a beacon and a model of a great place to work.
Okay.
Right? Just like you have great companies who are on every major list of this is a great place to work, City Hall should have that same model and that same standard.
Right.
And I think that's very important, and also to recognize that everybody has a role to play in making the city better.
So that Cleveland is under a consent decree. The Cowboys in the 4th district, they have they've lit this city up on multiple occasions. Back in the day when I was just a tad bit younger, 17 men were killed within one mayoral candidate, or I should say candidate, but mayoral tenure
Yeah.
within a 4-year period, and that's how we ended up with Frank. It was the ABC. It was the ABC principle. It was anybody but Campbell. Like so, that's how we ended up with Frank as our mayor. Frank ran, and he appeared to be a better candidate than Jane Campbell because she just allowed the police department to just be free. And so there were 17 men killed during that tenure. One of those people that were killed, he wasn't even a man. He was 15-year-old Brandon McLeod, who has pretty much become my poster child for the work that I do concerning police. And so Brandon's family never got justice. He never got justice. And so, it's a sad thing. But we find ourselves many years later with the Tamir Rice situation, with the Tanisha Anderson, with the Melissa and Timothy. And so Cleveland found itself under investigation by the Department of Justice and a consent decree. Did you read the report, the initial report that was done that led to the consent decree?
Absolutely, I did. As a result of the tragic murder of Tamir Rice, a group of my friends got together in community to create Hat Cleveland.
Okay.
I was a co-founder of that. And one of the first things we did in that effort was to find a way to better synthesize the consent decree for average residents to be able to read it and understand it. Because when you first downloaded it, it was in hundreds of pages
Several
in a
hundred
PDF,
pages, yes.
right? And so what we did was we actually created an app to put it on a smartphone.
Okay.
So you go to the website, put it in your smartphone, and it was easily readable, easily searchable. And I bring that up to say that when you think about criminal justice reform and what needs to get done, we believe that residents have a million ideas of how to really change our criminal justice system, and that we have to do a better job of meeting residents where they are and make them a key participant in these reform conversations. And our work with Hat Cleveland was all about that. We did a hackathon, which brought together folks that were affected by the criminal justice system, folks that experienced police brutality. We also brought folks from the ACLU together to talk about what are some new solutions that we can think about to really address our criminal justice system in a very new and different way. And because of that work, it led to the creation of an organization called Unveil, which essentially is kind of a Waze app for folks to really understand the pretrial system right now in our criminal justice system. And so giving folks the tools they need to understand, if you are detained, how do you get access to the civil rights you need to understand what's going on a daily basis? And so it's that type of change we need at the grassroots level now more than ever to make sure we hold our police system accountable.
Okay. So that means that you read the consent decree too then. And so have you kept up with the commission oversight and saw how that's been going? Are you satisfied with what you've seen so far?
I don't think that we've had enough change out of the consent decree. I mean, I just read a study a couple of weeks ago. It said we spent nearly $30 million over the last 10 years in settling police misconduct claims.
Yeah, and you got more to come.
Yeah. And so, and this is personal for me on multiple levels. I'm a son of a cop. And, my dad, when I was growing up, always taught me the importance of that conversation that we've all had. How do you talk to a cop when you get pulled over? What do you do to make sure you come home that night?
Right.
And I heard many stories from my dad of, him trying to hold his fellow officers accountable about how to actually talk to Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Jones when walking the beat.
Right.
How to approach him in a way that's going to respect them as tax-paying citizens in this community. And so I get both sides of this. I would also say, as mayor, the buck's going to stop with me in terms of holding our police force accountable. And this isn't about blaming police. This is about creating a police system that respects the constitutional appropriate policing in this community. It gives us better tools to start to address the true root causes of crime. But also, we need a completely different model of policing.
I agree.
When you look at what Columbus is doing with their reimagining public safety task force, they're going to start to pilot a co-responder model where social workers and behavioral health professionals accompanying police officers to handle nonviolent dispatch calls. That's a model we should pilot in Cleveland and scale over time to make sure that we are addressing the trauma and mental health issues that we're seeing in our community. The other thing I would say about this is, when you call 911 right now, you get three options: fire, police, and EMS. I think that has to change. I think we need to add a mental health component to the dispatch call system now, so that you can have another option if someone needs help during a mental health disturbance. And so these are all things that we're seeing being done in other cities, and it's past time Cleveland start to model and innovate some of these new ideas.
I agree. So are you aware of the research that I came out with probably going on 3 years now?
No, tell me about it.
Oh, you're going to love it. So the state of Ohio does not track police training. In 2007, our state legislature heard the cries of protesters and advocates, and that we needed some kind of legislation to hold police accountable.
Yeah.
And so they came up, and whoever wrote this is beautiful. I'll share it with you so you can read it.
Do.
But whoever wrote it, it's a very brilliant piece of legislation. But basically, like any lawyer, any social worker, doctor who has to take training, specific training, if they don't take it, they can't practice. They cannot function in that area. So police in 2007 were mandated specific areas of training that they were supposed to take, and if they didn't take it every year, they were no longer police the January 1st of next year. So the research initially started in one city, but we expanded it to the entire state to see. We got over 30,000 peace officers training records to see what was going on. And so what we found is that the state of Ohio does not audit departments to determine whether or not they actually took the training. And they are turning in these Excel spreadsheets with a yes or no next to the police officer's name as to whether or not they took training. So what we did was we went behind the rosters to see, give us the certificates, give us the lesson plans, the curriculum. Let's see what you're training people. So when you're seeing in the news all these conversations about police are killing people and all the violence that comes along with the interaction of citizens, it's because literally that's all they're getting. We have a well-trained militia in the state of Ohio. And so the Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy does not track their training, even though the code tells them they're required to. They're not tracking training. And so what we found is that there are multiple departments that are unlawfully engaging in law enforcement, and that a lot of these guys that are out here, especially the high-profile cases, the Tamir Rice case, the case of Luke Stewart in Euclid, and other high-profile cases around Ohio, Sean Williams, who killed John Crawford in Walmart, no training for years, like over 10 years, no training. And so these guys are literally impersonating police. They're out here, and so what we did was we started filing affidavits in our court system under the Ohio Revised Code 23 something. And so we're demanding the arrest and prosecution of not only those officers, but their chiefs and some certain people who are working in the office of OPATA. We're demanding that, the justice be served in these cases. And so we did pull Cleveland's records to see their lesson plans and curriculum, which gave us also an insight. So you'll probably look into this if you're elected. Yeah. But what we found is that OPATA is requiring that specific mandated training. So let's say, for instance, domestic violence. Okay, they have to take maybe an hour of domestic violence in some years. And so what we're finding is that we've never found one certificate of a certified instructor that can teach domestic violence. So how do you meet a mandate when you're not training the peace officers at the state level to be able to train other peace officers in the area of domestic violence or mental health crises, de-escalations, community policing? Everybody that has an advanced instructor certificate is for firearms.
Wow.
Like, there's no one who holds a certificate. So when they're sending in these Excel spreadsheets to the state and they're saying, hey, we took domestic violence. Well, who taught the domestic violence? And then it flips to another issue that the state is allowing peace officers to take classes online, which is prohibited by our administrative code. And the classes are 3 minutes long, and they're giving them an hour credit for it. And so no one has been looking at this.
That's interesting.
No one's been looking at this. And so everyone kind of trusts who's in their positions. And when we first started it, Apata said, "Hey, it's an honor system." I'm like, "Hold on, you sent $180,000 to this department, and it was an honor system? Can you cut Mariah a check for $180,000? I'm telling you, I took the training. Send me." They won't send me $180,000.
It's that old saying, trust but verify.
Exactly. Yeah. So the push, and I think you've kind of heard this with Yost and DeWine. They've been talking about now they want them licensed. But I think that what we need to do is enforce the current laws until new laws are implemented. And that means that under our current law, if someone has not taken that mandated training, that they are removed immediately from policing until they become compliant. And so I've kind of been talking to Blaine Griffin about this.
Great. Okay.
And kind of, teaching him what's going on. But I think as a mayor, that a mayor would really be concerned about his department when an independent study has been done to show that your department is saying that they took specific mandated training, your department is getting X amount of money for this training. And there are often times where a lot of these departments are actually telling the state, no, we did not take the training. Like we have lots of those rosters. They never took the training.
Well, please send me that research.
Yes.
I would love to take a look at it.
We'll make another, and I'll bring some stuff to you.
Please do.
But yeah, you'll be able to see that, it's a concern. And I think that at the local level, that it would behoove mayors to set up their own training system to make sure that their officers are trained and that they're recording that training appropriately.
Great point.
Jeff Fomer and Steve Loomis, I requested their records as they're sitting and we're sitting on our oversight. And I got a letter with dates, only dates, and signed by the training officer that said, hey, they took training on these dates. But what training did they take? I don't know. And so there's no way of tracking if they're actually doing it. But we know that they have excellent shooting skills. We know this. And so I think that that's a concern that, all citizens, all
thank you for bringing that
residents.
To my
So
really
and so I'll share some more with you as we go on. But holding it accountable in the courts, holding it accountable with the prosecutor's office, because the prosecutor actually gets the information from the state.
And this is where I think, I know there are a lot of activists calling for this, and as a candidate and as a mayor, I intend to champion this.
Okay.
A truly independent civilian review oversight board.
All right.
With real teeth.
Right.
And this is about making sure that we hold everybody accountable. And what you've seen in other cities, in Camden, New Jersey, for example, they brought activists along and were a part of the conversation, right? New Orleans, another good example.
Right.
And so for us to truly make sure that we can meet the demands and the aims of the consent decree, we need a truly independent civilian review oversight board that has real teeth.
Right.
To make sure we can root out the bad behavior, because I don't want to see another Tamir Rice.
Right. I don't want to see any of these cases. These cases, it really, and I tell people this is not a strike against the police. Actually, I feel sorry for the police because we're asking them to put a gun and badge on and go out there and risk their lives, and we're not equipping them. Yeah. And that's not fair. Yeah. That's just not fair. And they are afraid for their lives.
And but for the fact that my dad has some street smarts.
Exactly.
Not every cop has that kind of competence.
Exactly.
And there were many nights that I was just afraid he wasn't going to come home.
Right.
And so this is about making sure folks have the training they need to get home to their families.
Exactly.
And everybody wins in that scenario.
And I used to be the anti-police person. I was like, I was like that. But once I started getting into this research and talking to chiefs of police and actually listening to them, that there are problems internally with policing that we as the public don't know. And so a lot of them support the work I'm doing. And they're like, yeah, we finally got somebody to talk for us. Because they've been screaming at the state for help and that they actually want the training.
And this is really, this is really about setting a new table and having hard conversation.
Exactly.
Right? And obviously there's politics involved. But when it comes to the safety and security of our neighborhoods, we got to remove politics and just get to the real.
Exactly.
And that needs to be a key part of what we do.
Okay, so we've covered schools. We've covered police. We've covered the new culture
Yeah.
to be brought to
Yeah.
City Hall.
Yeah.
We've covered your awesome background experiences,
Yeah.
and like I said, Darnell Brewer would be calling me like, "Hey man, hook me up with Oklahoma." So we covered that, and so what do you want people to know about you and why you are the candidate, the best candidate for the city of Cleveland? Why do you feel like you're going to be the one that
We're
brings
sitting
Cleveland
here
back?
on March 12th.
Okay.
And, we are the only officially announced campaign out here hitting the streets, building a movement to change the city. Since we announced January 12th, we have over 500 volunteers that have signed up to join our campaign. Over 200 people across the city from east side to west side to downtown circulating petitions for us to get on the ballot. And the question I get the most throughout the campaign thus far has been, how are you going to get people excited to vote? When we've had a city that is, systematically oppressed people's democratic rights and values. The fact that we don't have public comment at city council meetings. The fact that when, voters mobilize to get $15 minimum wage on the ballot, and the city suppressed their vote. The fact that when folks wanted to have a say on the merits of the Q deal, we suppressed their vote. So of course people aren't going to vote when you mobilize and organize and you fight, and the people in power tell you no.
Right.
And so what we're doing in this campaign is we are prioritizing democracy building, block by block, precinct by precinct, resident by resident, to make sure that the will of the people are heard. And if you feel like you've been knocked down, your voice hasn't been heard, oppressed, our campaign is a home for you, because I know you can't wait, we can't wait, and Cleveland can't wait.
Right.
And now is the time for new ideas and new leadership. And if you feel that call for change, this is the campaign we want you to be a part of.
Right. That's awesome. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So my son said to me last night, he's moved out of Cleveland. He was
Yeah.
in the Mount Pleasant area. He said, I can't stay here anymore. I got to go. So he moved. And so my daughter lives in Cleveland Heights, and my other son moved to Barberton, and my other daughter, she moved way out to California.
Okay.
So I'm the one still left in Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
And so he says to me last night, he says, Mom, about 10 years of gentrification is going to kick in. Your house will be worth something again. And I'm like, do you know how old I will be in 10 years? Like, I don't want to wait 10 years to see my city come back. I think that it's urgent. It's
It has to
urgent.
happen now.
It has to happen now.
We're getting ready to get $500 million right now from the federal government in stimulus.
Okay.
And we don't have a plan in place to spend that money.
Why not? Because the voices aren't there.
Exactly.
And they're going to do what they want to do. But I think that's been the goal in Cleveland for quite some time, is to bring in renters and not homeowners. Because more renters don't really vote. They don't care. They're not paying the taxes, and most landlords live out of state. So there's less people coming to council, and there's less people that's going to hold them accountable. And the people who are here, they're elderly, they're living in senior citizens buildings. And I don't see anybody running into Cleveland to purchase homes like years ago. When growing up here, there was 1 million people in Cleveland. And I miss that city.
Yeah.
I miss it.
But we can bring it back.
And I believe that. I believe that young people like you are going to bring it back. And in 10 years, I'm going to be just as happy. Like, yeah. So, I'm excited because, like I said, I see people like you. I see people like the other candidates that are young, and you're youthful. You're full of energy. You're full of life. You give me hope.
Thank you so much.
I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I am really praying that you have a successful campaign. I never tell people if I'm going to support them, and I don't endorse them. I never endorse, but I endorse when I go to the polls, and I make sure that the vote gets in, and I'll text you and let you know I did not vote for you. So I had a couple people call me, and they were like, "Why you wouldn't endorse me?" I was like, "Because you suck." So like, I'm not going to endorse you. And so I'm brutally honest at times. Okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
But I'm excited. So. You seem very confident. It seems like you have some really good background, and you're stable, and I think that you are a good look for the future. I like what I'm seeing.
Thank you.
And so keep it up. Keep that
I will.
smile up.
I'm going to do my best.
That smile is $1 million.
Thank you.
Make sure you keep that smile
I
up and continue to engage our community. And I'm wishing you the best in this campaign.
Thank you so much.
So do you have anything else you want? Oh, before we get off,
Yeah.
I want you to tell people how they can get in touch with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
give
can,
them information.
check out our website at
Okay.
bibbforcle.com. That's BIBBFORCLE.com. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And also shoot us an email at info@bibbforcle.com as well to join our campaign to change Cleveland.
All right.
Because Cleveland can't wait.
You have a phone number?
We do.
Okay, what's the phone number?
It is 216-327-2627.
One more.
216-327-2627.
And the website?
www.bibbforcle.com.
All right. So you've got the information out there. Now, I'm going to ask you ahead of time. In about a month from now, I would like to re-interview you. Because I want to hear what's going on out there. And if you're in meetings or something, give me a call. I'll come and I'll video what you're doing because I want people to be able to hear who you are and get this information out. You get 10 brownie points just because you're young and enthusiastic. Okay?
Thank you.
I'm excited for you. I'm excited for this campaign. I think it's going to be very challenging because you have to face, the Democratic Party and name recognition.
Yeah.
But I think that what you talked about this morning, what I think that you've expressed, I think you're going to be able to overcome that.
Thank you.
That's just my opinion, Who am I?
Let the people decide, as they say.
Right.
One voter at a time.
So just let me know when you're ready to do your next one, and we'll get together. We'll have, some real conversation. I'll share with you the research that we have, and I'm just excited. I'm really excited for you. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Look forward to coming back soon.
Yes. We're going to do this soon. This soon.
Good.
And so thank you, and I appreciate you and everything about you. You are the future, and I like that. It's a good future.
Thank you.
All right.